cloud. You should get a little pop. Okay, Amanda, hello. Thank you for allowing me to record this salary conversation because a lot of students have it. So I wanted to just jump right into it. Tell me what kind of questions you have about salary negotiation.
Sure. The first one I have is, as a business student, do I have the ability to negotiate my salary with little to no experience?
So that's a great question. And so there are really two thoughts that I want you to think about in approaching this question. There is salary negotiation and there's salary conversation. And those are two different things. Salary negotiation means you have a little leverage, your ability to you can walk away from it. You feel like you might have the capacity to get a little more money or some more benefits. Salary conversation is just asking the question. The majority of college students are going to fall into the salary conversation, which can lead to a negotiation. But what I would say for starters is the first thing that you just need to get comfortable with is asking about the salary and benefits and asking about it at the right time. And then I can show you, I'm going to leave you with a resource to show you some more in-depth information just on the negotiation. So again, most college students are going to get into the conversation, and we can talk a little bit more about that. So did that answer that question?
Yes, it did.
Okay, great.
The second question I have is, when is the proper time to bring up salary and benefits if the employer hasn't brought it up yet?
Okay, so that's great. And it's a nice segue to what we were just talking about. So salary negotiation and salary conversation. So when do you bring up the salary conversation to potentially to get to the negotiation? My recommendation is usually never on the first interview. Most companies have a minimum of 2 interviews. Some companies have 3. With Zoom, we're seeing those be consolidated. So the first interview is typically going to be a Zoom or a phone screen. I would say a recruiter may bring it up then. A second round of interviews with a student, if it has not been brought up, is the appropriate time for you to get into the salary conversation. And typically you will go through a full interview. There is a process to an interview. Tell me about yourself. There's a meaty part of the interview that takes up the majority of the time. And then the last part of the interview is usually a Q&A, where an interviewer will say, what kind of questions do you have for me? So you'll know that the interview is coming to an end with that cue. Typically, if it has not been brought up yet, this would be the right time to bring it up. But it's also how you bring it up. So not necessarily say, what is the salary for this position, which obviously you want to know. Instead, for a college student, what I recommend is Q&A, important, intelligent questions about the company, getting your interview engaged in a dialogue. And then the final step would be, when would be the appropriate time to discuss the salary and benefits? Then one of the things I want you to understand too is there's more to a salary conversation and a negotiation than just a number amount for a salary. There are a lot of things that go into benefits. You know, there could be flexible work schedules, training, graduate school. So that could be part of this conversation. So again, as a student, if it hasn't been brought up, latter part of the second phase of an interview would be the appropriate time.
Okay, great. The last question I have is, if they ask me what my preferred salary is, what should I tell them?
Okay, so that's a great question too. And what I would say for this is, you're moving more to the salary negotiation, right? You've brought it up, you're into the conversation. One thing I would tell you is, as a student, it's very nerve-wracking to talk about salary, right? You know, your mom says, don't bring up things about age, IQ, salary, you don't talk about money. As a recruiter, I talk about it every day, recruiting and hiring people. So it's not uncomfortable for me. It's uncomfortable for you or a college student because you haven't done it a lot. So what I would say is, you have to know your worth. Typically, as you mentioned, without a lot of experience or without leverage of potentially having another great offer that you really like, you'll need to understand what you're worth. There are some really great tools. There's Salary Guide, there's LinkedIn, there's PayScale, there's Glassdoor. What I would do is recommend spending some time on the company's website and also on these other resources to look at what is a standard salary. Now, what I can tell you is, based on NACE, National Association of Colleges and Employers, we have really good data for college students. The average college students, if I take all majors across all states and crunch them together, for 2021 and projected for 22, is going to be anywhere from about 48 to 52 base salary. just having that basic information helps give you an idea of where you might want to start. For our business students at the Citadel, 50 historically for the last 5 years, based on the data that I do have, is a good minimum. Now, my recommendation is if you're getting more into a negotiation where somebody would say, Amanda, what is it that you're looking for? Usually in a negotiation, you don't want to be the first one to speak, right? So that's kind of an old negotiation tactic. And so understanding your worth, where you might say to an employer, well, I want to make you aware, in doing my research and preparing for this interview, I looked at information on pay scale and these 3 sources, and I work with our Career Center. I would like to start off in the 50 to 55 range. So you could give them a range if they ask. And so if they give you a salary, let's just say you're working with a local company here who I know pays a lot of their entry-level recruiters $35,000 base, but they have a commission structure, you would be able to get into more of a negotiation or conversation now to say, well, I was hoping to start off in the 50 to 55 range. Tell me about what you're offering for this position. If I'm a recruiter for that company, I might say, well, our base salary is $35,000, but we also have a commission structure that should bring you more within that range within the first year. And then we would get more into details about that, how that commission structure works. So really what you're looking for is as much information as possible to make a good decision on what you need. So again, these are kind of the big overview. I want to show you really quickly. If you just Google the Citadel Career Center main page, we have a lot of good, not only interview tips, but we have a lot of good resources. And on the Citadel Career Center resource tab, some of the handouts that we share on the bottom are both salary negotiation guide and salary calculator. So these have a little bit more in-depth information that I'll share with you as well. So hopefully, I know we only had a brief period of time, so hopefully this hits the highlights.
Yes, it sure did.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for allowing me to record you. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for answering my questions.
Absolutely.